What if I showed up to your front door and asked you what's the most powerful thing you can do or say to indicate rock solid confidence? It's not what you expect. Today we're going to talk about it. I'm Barron Cruz. Welcome to the Charisma Matrix. It's always interesting to me to see that so many times people, as they progress on through life, 30s, 40s, and 50s, they can't see their own blind spots or their social errors or mistakes that they've been making for years upon years. And, in turn, they've been getting this negative social feedback, but they just don't know what it was that was creating that negative social feedback. There's so many different things. There's so many different sub-communications going on. It's actually a lot harder than it sounds to pin down what can oftentimes evoke a negative reaction. So the cool thing about that is oftentimes if you're able just to point out to someone something they're doing incorrectly, just by them noticing that, themselves and their subconscious will kind of take over from there. And without any really other coaching or any other kind of advice needed, they're able to correct that simply because nobody wants to make social errors. Nobody wants to get a bad response from other people ever. So if they know, okay, I'm doing this is going to create a bad response, most of the time people are going to be able to correct that and adjust that. So what I want to do today is go through a couple key concepts around this point, but also talk about some things that I see very commonly with my students and out in public that people do that both evoke negative responses that they may not know, but more importantly, give off the perception that you're low status, that you don't have a lot of power and authority in your life, that you get stressed out about social situations easily that maybe otherwise you shouldn't. Although I may get kind of worked up and act a little bit disgusted and off-put by some of these non-confident behaviors that people give off, it really isn't their fault. People are so starved for significance and power and authority in their own lives. I had a video a couple weeks ago about peer pressure, talking about how people, they can't be confident because they know they can get knocked off what they want to do simply by other people applying pressure. And in this instance, it's just another kind of facet towards that. You look at the average person's life, they go to work and they have to suck up to a boss they don't like. They have to act very supplicative and very, anything you want. And then they get home and maybe, a lot of the cultural TV shows we see now, it's kind of funny and chic for the wife to make fun of the doofus husband. So maybe he's a little emasculated at home. And so, of course, anytime he gets a chance to exert any power that he may have by any means, he's going to do that. But the problem is a truly confident person isn't going to do that. They don't need to jump all over that because they know they have power and confidence and influence in all other aspects of their life. So let's walk through these, and if you find yourself agreeing or find that these resonate with you as things that sometimes you do in your own life, that's fine. But realize what they're communicating, and also realize that at a much deeper issue, they're saying that you have a need to exert power and you have a need to cling kind of desperately to these opportunities that a confident person would never exert power over. A confident person would be thinking from an empathetic stance. How can I make this better for the other person? And I'll walk through some of these examples as we continue on. All right, I love this example because everyone can resonate with it, because it seems like everyone that works in a company over the size of 10 has one of these guys. And it's the guy that just loves to be at work. He'd rather be at work than be at home. He's the guy that's there till 10 o'clock at night and the first one there doesn't seem to mind it. He's not too upset when he's got to come in on the weekend. And the reason that is because maybe he's the middle manager, or maybe he is in a position of influence and authority in that company. Well, that affords him the knowledge that he will always be treated with a level of respect. What he wants will be respected by his subordinates because he has hierarchical, through the hierarchy, he has control over those people because I guess if you look at it, he can yank their salary. He can have them no longer be employed with the company, which would impact their families, their personal life, and a multitude of other aspects of their life. So people have to treat him the way he wants to be treated. So likely outside of work, he's treated like any other doofus. But he knows that when he goes to work, all of a sudden he puts on this coat that makes other people have to treat him that way. It's very desperate, and everyone knows that guy. I'm sure that you can think of the guy in work, or maybe a couple of guys at work that are like that right now. But what does that communicate about him? It communicates that in his real life, outside of work, his personal life, he's treated with a lack of respect. He's treated poorly. He doesn't feel confident. He doesn't feel like he has power. So he wants to run and always be in the environment that he has power. And it's gross, especially if you're a subordinate that has to deal with that. It's terrible. It's a terrible working situation. But can you blame him? The dude wants to feel important. Of course he's going to go to the place that he feels important. You can't blame him. But what he should do is work on becoming more confident in other parts of his life outside of work. And that way he wouldn't cling like the jaws of death on to being in that environment, because he would know it's a more smooth, level playing field when he leaves. Maybe he's not as big of a dog as when he's in the office, going around, but at least he knows he's gonna be treated with a certain level of respect. So the bigger the duality between the way he's treated at work and in his other life, the more he'll cling to be there. Now look at a guy, I like to use a guy like Elon Musk. I'm actually reading his autobiography right now. And he's kind of a cocky guy. Like, it sounds like behind the scenes, most of the guys, like, he's kind of a drill sergeant, but he's a very confident guy, super smart guy. He understands everything about his businesses to the level typically of the experts, like the engineers, the marketing guys. He almost knows it better than they do. Some of the scientific and the design parts of the spaceship, he actually knows as well as some of the guys crafting it and fabricating it. So it's pretty crazy. But do you think that guy wants to be at SpaceX because he knows everyone's going to suck up to him? Absolutely not, because he knows when he leaves, through his mannerisms, through his reputation and all that kind of stuff, he's going to be treated the same way, if not even better, not because people have to, but because of who he is. He's a competent person, and he evokes that kind of treatment from other people. So we should always strive to have that level of authority, both within our business. Of course, you want to rise to a level where you have authority and influence and clout. But as soon as you leave, you want to feel like you've got that exact same level because of the person you are, the confidence you have, and the subcommunication, nonverbals, and other ways that you present yourself are going to guarantee that that happens. Now, when something sticks with you from 6th grade on, that it's pretty important. It was pretty impacting on your life at that time. And I want to talk about something that has to do with this that happened to me in 6th grade. My social studies teacher actually happened to be a basketball coach too, and it was his last couple years. So he had the tendency when he was playing a video in class to play 60 minutes throughout the period, and then the next day go back maybe 45 minutes. So you'd end up rewatching each part 3 or 4 times. But this movie was Schindler's List, which is a fantastic movie. And there was a scene where there was this one real wild Nazi that would just get in his out of his room, out his balcony, just get a gun and start shooting the Jews from his balcony just because he could. And some other guy, I don't know if he was a Nazi or what, but he said, what true power is having the ability to do something like that, to exert your power and your influence, and choosing not to. He said the pardon is the most powerful act that you can have. And this is a long time ago, so I may be wording it incorrectly, but that was the gist of it. So what happened was the next time he had some Jewish kid that was cleaning his tub, and the kid was working for like 6 hours, and he got everything clean except there was one little soap scum or something that he couldn't get out. He came and said, I did everything I could and I just couldn't get the soap scum. And he tried that on. He says, I touched him on the shoulder. He says, I pardon you. And then, it shows the poor kid walking out later, and he ends up getting his gun and shooting him on the way out. He just couldn't handle that. It's a great example of someone who has to use that situational power. His party is in power. That's the situation. He knows no one can do anything to him, so he's going to do that. That really stuck with me. So think about that. When you're in a position that you can exert your power and you have influence from the hierarchy and environment that you're in, see how that feels to step back and not do it. And let me give you an example. When you're at a restaurant, say you're at a real nice restaurant, and you get served your plate of food, and you see, and there's just a long black hair in the food. I mean, it's obvious. It's not hidden. It's not like you had to stir it up. It's on top. It's laying there. Okay. What are you going to do? The incompetent, the lower competence person is going to immediately make as big of a deal as possible. Why? Because they are being served. The restaurant's responsibility is to give them a quality product without hair that's sanitary. So of course they're going to jump all over it. And then they're going to, everyone, can you believe there was a hair in that? That's disgusting. I'm going to write a Yelp review about this place. Can I talk to the manager? This is ridiculous. Raise their voice, making a scene, likely Because the last time they've been in a position to beef and to have someone come up to them and say, oh, we're so sorry that happened, was a long time ago. So they feel like they have to jump on that. It's sad. But that's the reason behind it. What would a really confident person do? A really confident person is going to be going to keep it low key. They're not going to try to make a big deal. They may even be worried about not embarrassing the waiter as they come over. Ma'am, I don't mean to make a big deal, but there's a little hair in this thing. Do you think there's any chance they could maybe make another plate of this and bring it out? That'd be great. Something like that. Now, of course, whenever I bring these up, I know sometimes they can be misconstrued as being too passive. This is coming from a position of power. This is a very confident person doing this. If the waiter ever does anything that's rude, like, whatever, just don't make a big deal. Well, then you can make a big deal out of it because they're handling it the wrong way. I'd like to speak to your manager. This isn't quality. This isn't what I've come to expect when I come to a restaurant like this. Then you can take it there. But most of the time, that's never going to happen. So be empathetic from their standpoint. It's probably not their fault. They're probably walking and maybe there's a hair in the air or something that landed on it. But it definitely wasn't the waiter's fault. So the last person you should be mad at them. But someone who's of low status and low power, they're not thinking whose fault it is. They don't care. It's their chance to have power and authority. Can you believe this? Take this back. Send this back to the chef. This is ridiculous. Clinging to that power. So this happens quite often. People send food back for whatever reason. Maybe it's out of hair. Maybe your steak is cooked incorrectly. But notice how you naturally address these things. And I'm guessing that if you have more empathy than you have outrage, you're probably a more confident person. You probably have more authority and power and influence on your day-to-day life. All right, the last example is around social norms. People feel like they can single-handedly put pressure on other people to conform to social norms because all of society is behind them. So as they normally would never do something or confront someone by themselves, they'll do just a little ping confrontation just to let you know because they feel comfortable just enough to do that. So I love the example, you're in line at Starbucks and say you're talking or someone's talking a little bit too loud. Well, someone's usually very comfortable just shooting a sharp glance at them to let them know they're talking too loud. Just got kind of a quick, like it's totally bothering them, like they can't believe it, right? But the funny thing is, if you were to confront someone, say you're in there and you're talking too loud, right? A little bit louder than normal and someone gives you that look, and you were to confront them and say, hey man, is everything all right? It was just kind of a weird glance you shot me. They're gonna say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine, how are you? They're never gonna stand up to that, but they feel like they have enough authority and influence because it's a social norm and because society's behind them to shoot that little glance. I absolutely hate that, but it's amazing that people feel like that's all the authority. I mean, if you're really that upset about someone talking loud, say something. Say, hey man, you're talking so loud, I'm having a hard time deciding what I'm going to order. Do you mind just keeping it down a bit? No problem, but just keep it down a bit. Say something. Have the gall to stand up if it's really that bothering to you. Don't do this little chip shot where you're going to back off if someone was to say something to you. That's low status. That indicates, once again, low power, low influence. An example I love is road rage. People feel like they can behave in ways in their car that they never would outside of it because they're kind of protected. Someone going to run you down going 70 miles an hour. It seems like they're safe in their car. Something I love is when you go to pass someone, whether it be in the slow lane or if you're actually going to pass, how many times will the person you're passing speed up? And maybe even to the point that you have to slow down and get behind them. Well, the reason that is because they want their influence. They feel slighted by doing that. They know there's a very little chance of confrontation after that. So they're going to speed up. By golly, they're going to exert that influence. You're going to learn. You're going to learn. You're not going to pass me. I'm going to speed up and you're going to have to go behind me in your face. Just another example of people feeling like they have to exert that influence when they have the chance. All right. The last example is something that I actually want you to try because I want you to feel how this feels. And that's another example when you're in a line. So typically the rate that people move up when there's a space in front of them is so quick. Less than a second. There's a spot, they're moving right up in line. So when someone steps up, just pause, even 5 seconds, and people are usually comfortable just kind of getting close to you, like, hey, you need to be moving up. You need to be moving up, like it's going to change the speed of the line. But they feel they have the power and the confidence to get you to move up a little bit. One of those things, just like the Starbucks line, right? You're talking too loud. Not saying that, but so they're going to move up behind you. Just stand there, just whatever. It's no big deal. Just stand there for 5-10 seconds. See what it feels like and notice the other person is probably comfortable infringing on your space, implying you should move forward. And just get used to that. There's no problem with it all. They're not going to say anything. If they do, so be it. In a hurry today, or that's not going to speed up the line, but as you wish. Just whatever. But most time people won't say anything, but they feel comfortable enough just getting close to you. So that's another example. So feel that social pressure. Stand there and notice how people behind you will typically do that. All right, I think that's enough examples. So now you know what to watch for. Anytime you can pardon someone, you're in a position of situational authority that you don't use, you don't feel like you absolutely have to use it because it's the only chance you have to feel important, do that. You'll find as you naturally grow in your social skills, which leads to confidence, which leads to influence, and leads to power, you're going to find as you improve that you're going to feel the need to jump on those layups, those powerful layups, I guess they are, less and less because you just don't need to. At that point, you're more worried about empathizing with the other person than for you to squeeze that little juice of power that you can when it's handed to you at a platter. Talk to you soon.